When I was about 4 years old, my parents got divorced. They were constantly at each other's throats because they were both extremely narcissistic and had addiction issues. When they finally split, my mother completely banned me from seeing him. No contact or visiting or anything. It had been maybe a year since seeing my dad. This, of course, will make any parent lose their mind, but he took it to an extreme. He began stalking our family, following us to the grocery store or just having his car parked outside our house to watch us. Of course, I was too young to know what was happening, so I wasn't told this until I was older. My mom eventually got a restraining order. Things seemed to go quiet and calmer. My cousins came from out of state to visit and were staying the night at our house. Me and my cousin Elena were pretty much inseparable. So naturally we stayed up all night. One night, at maybe 1 in the morning, we decided to sneak out of our room and go play on our computer in the basement. As we head down there, we kept whispering and laughing so we could definitely be heard if someone was nearby. Once we're in the basement, we start to head to the computer, which was around the corner. All of a sudden, I'm overcome with a sense of someone watching us and just pure fear. I shushed my cousin, even though she was 2 years older. She saw how serious I looked. I looked in front of us and saw an open window that's ground level. Suddenly, I sensed exactly where the person was, and somehow, I knew who it was. I turned to the computer desk and said, "Dad?" And I saw him, my dad, come up from under the desk. Even though I sensed him there, I was still shocked I was right, and completely terrified because I knew this wasn't right, that he shouldn't be in the house. He looked at me and only said, "Don't tell your mother," and then he crawled back out of the window. I was so scared, but I didn't hesitate to run upstairs to get my mom. She was passed out drunk, so she didn't wake up when I called out her name. I jumped up on the bed and started shaking her. She finally woke up and I just started crying and telling her that Dad was just in the house and he told me not to tell you. Since my mom had been an alcoholic for decades, she was a functional drunk, so she was able to sober up real quick and call the police. My heart was still racing when the police came to the house. When the policeman started asking me questions, I got so scared that I just fainted right there. I have no memory of what happened after I woke up. Years later, I was told by my brother he had a similar experience. He woke up one night with a strange feeling and caught my dad trying to put drugs in my mom's vodka bottle. After that, my dad was arrested. I still have no idea how I knew my dad was there and that it was him. I still get nightmares pretty much nightly of my father. I do make sure all the windows are locked every night though. This happened to me in late December of 2007 when I was about 8 years old. It was probably one of the most horrific moments of my entire life. Well, to start off, it was Christmas time. I remember getting up early and opening my presents with my parents and my twin sister. One of my presents was a Simpsons movie figurine combo set, or something like that. It was basically a set of character figurines from The Simpsons. It also contained the Simpsons movie. Now, before you say anything about an 8-year-old watching The Simpsons, I'll have you know my dad was a complete fan of the series. He literally bought every season and volume of it, and we would watch it together. Anyway, fast forward 2 nights. I believe this occurred December 27th. I can't really remember crystal clear on what happened that day, but I can only remember the events that occurred at night. My parents had to put us to bed, and for some reason, me and my sister could not sleep. Since I couldn't sleep, I snuck into her room to talk and play with toys. You know, the things that 8-year-olds would normally do. Now, it had gotten pretty late past our bedtime, about maybe 11:45 or something like that. Soon, me and my sister got bored. I remember her having the idea to go into my parents' room and crash there and watch the Simpsons movie on their TV. We both agreed it would be a great idea, considering we knew that they were sleepers and they snored obnoxiously loud. We also knew that they wouldn't mind us sleeping in their room. So me and my sister turned off all the lights in our rooms and headed for our parents'. The most prominent thing I can remember that night was how cold it was. At that time we lived in an old Victorian house that didn't have an AC. Another thing I remember is how eerily pitch black it was when we turned off all the lights before entering the long hallway. I was not a big fan of the dark back then. In fact, I had trouble sleeping in my room, let alone that I had a light on. When we entered our parents' room, we turned on the TV and set up the movie. I brought my blankets and got bundled in. About 45 minutes into the movie, I heard the basement door downstairs slam shut. Now, our basement door is pretty thick and heavy. It takes a lot of force to slam. I remember just sitting there full of fear and terror and having that uneasy feeling in your stomach. I felt like a deer that had seen headlights. After the door slammed, I heard footsteps coming walking down the hall. They sounded like a pair of heavy-set boots. Me and my sister just sat still. The footsteps came near the stairs that led upstairs. As soon as you come upstairs, the first room you would see would be my parents. So if this person came upstairs, the first room that they would probably walk in was the room we were in. After that, I heard nothing. It felt like me and my sister were just laying there for hours. What really unnerved me most was that I heard footsteps, no doors opening or closing, concluding that they exited the house. I then remember grabbing the remote and turning off the TV, and hiding off the sheets. It took me a while, but I finally fell asleep. The next morning, me and my sister told my parents about it, but they didn't believe us. They just shrugged it off as simply as they left it ajar or the wind pushed it. This is a short story, and while it may not seem too creepy now, it was terrifying to my 8-year-old self. The home I grew up in was in Long Island, New York, and the basement is lined on one side with small windows, probably about 3 feet by 1 rectangular with sliding glass panes on them. The house was built during World War II, so it's made of what they had at the time. Normally we would have had curtains on the inside of those windows, so nothing could see in and come in. This particular day, my mother had been washing them and hadn't put them back up yet. Anyway, I was around 8 or 9 years old and sitting there playing Mario 3 on my NES, when I got the distinct feeling like I was being watched or someone was there. I look over my shoulder to the windows, and I see the outline of someone's face there. Once they notice me looking at them, they knock on the window really, really loud, vigorously wave at me, and then bolt off, hopping over the neighbour's fence into the adjacent yard. Needless to say, I left the NES on and noped my way out of there as fast as possible. The next day, the NES was moved upstairs to the family room, and I still check to make sure curtains are on if I'm down at the basement.